Greg, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Nick. Thanks for inviting me. I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you mind giving our listeners kind of your background, the 411 on who you are and what you're going to bring to the show today?
Sure. So while today I am an academic and have been for several years, my entire career has been as a serial entrepreneur. I started way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth in the mid-1980s in software and robotics. I actually was doing things that they called artificial intelligence and machine language that we only think about is new today. But we're actually new way back then too. But I've been in the garage in $0 million businesses, and I've been in multi-billion-dollar businesses, and I've had some great successes, a couple wonderful exits, and some singles and doubles and triples along the way, all around mainly B2B enterprise technology and software.
Have you seen a lot of differences in what's changed from the 1980s to today?
There's a lot of consistency. Certainly, I think the pace and pressure of business is much faster than it was then. I think we thought it was fast then, and it probably was for the time. But I think because information exchange is so much more transparent than it was back then. And I think expectations of what satisfies a customer certainly has radically changed. We've moved from a seller-centric, information-controlled world to a customer-centric, customer information-controlled world. And that's not only in B2C, but B2B.
And as far as the academics that you do now, would you mind telling us where you do the academics and what your positions are?
Sure. I'm at both the University of Pittsburgh as well as Carnegie Mellon University. I am primarily at CMU, where I am the executive director for a master's degree program dedicated to product management. It's the first only, and therefore, Nick, it's the best degree in product management. We built this. This was a new product launch, new product rollout. I like to consider myself the product manager of the product management program.
I like that. That's a nice ring to it, right?
It does, and I feel like it every day. There's a great thought leader in product management. His name is Dan Olson, who did a stint in Pittsburgh for some time, but now he's in Silicon Valley. And he talks about, paraphrasing Spider-Man, that product managers have all the responsibility and none of the authority.
That does sound about right, I think.
Yeah, so I think CEOs, people that run companies, feel that way every day too.
Yeah, for sure. So do you feel like you're giving back through your teachings? Is that kind of where you are in your career?
I do. I have been very blessed with some wonderful experiences. Many of them in the Pittsburgh region, but I've also, worked and lived in other areas like Northern Virginia, where I spent many years, and certainly have had the opportunity to work and play in, Boston, Silicon Valley, Austin. I did a stint in a company in Paris for a while, which sounds glamorous until you realize it's just a hotel room just like anywhere else. And so this part of my career, both in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, I'm able to give back to the next generation of students some of the lessons that I've learned along the way.
Right. And I think that's why I was so intrigued to have you on the show is, you work with young entrepreneurs, and we try to gear our show to the young entrepreneurs and places where they can kind of pick up real world experience. So what type of lessons do you try to teach them right from the beginning? Because I think the thing is if I've learned anything being an entrepreneur, it means that I know nothing as an entrepreneur, right? Like never expect anything, and always be ready to do things that I never thought I would do, I guess, to go directions that,
Going back to your earlier point, I'm from a generation of entrepreneurs. When you said you were an entrepreneur, it just meant you were out of work. And you were looking for your next job. And people used to always ask the question, too, whether you could even teach entrepreneurship. And so, things along those lines have changed. People have realized the part that's art, that's parts of science, and everything in between. And it's great to hear young people say, I want to start my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur. And that is the career path for some portion of their lives that they want to take on. So very exciting to be able to help students on that mission or on that dream. The thing that I get most often, and I actually put a post on LinkedIn about this, and it's funny, it happens, it's almost like a regular cadence. I had one from a CMU Tepper MBA that I got connected with this week. And it's always the question of, here's my idea, what do you think of my idea? And I answer that with, what the hell do I know? What the hell do I know about your idea? But what you can really focus on is, what is the problem that you're solving? Who is your customer? Who are you solving that problem for? Is it a big enough marketplace relative to the amount of capital you're going to put in to solve it? And most importantly, this is, because I like to think of myself as a marketing person, is what is your differentiation? What is your differentiated value proposition? I had an old mentor of mine, Jack Roseman, used to say, if you were to go out of business today, would anyone care? And that's a great statement. That's a great thought process of, he used to also say, Jack used to say, why do you deserve to be in business? And I love that. Why do you deserve to be in business? It rings so true, but it goes to the heart of, do you have a problem? Who's your customer? Is the market big enough? What's your solution? Why is it different? Those kind of basic blocking and tackling are so important.
And when you talk about the marketing, like you mentioned that you consider yourself a marketer, how important is the marketing? I always feel like that's a huge part of the equation.
I think people underestimate just how hard it is.
Yeah.
In a lot of small companies in particular, there's the person who builds it, whether it's the engineer or the baker or the manufacturer, or whatever, the person who builds it, and there's someone that sells it. And there's not much in between, right? And people forget that, hey, you got to give some air cover to the people that, to translate what you've built, and air cover to those who are going to go out there and actually press the flesh, or, they're going to buy it online to drive sales, whatever it is. It's so valuable because that's where the friction is. And it's the friction in the marketplace. And if you can reduce that friction, you can scale and repeat and become profitable, right? And so, one of the problems with marketing is up until very recently, a lot of marketing was in the creativity bucket versus the measuring bucket. In today's world, because of the internet, we have a lot more metrics and goals that we can actually see. Where is our money going? In what bucket? Is that valuable? Is it making a difference? Is it shortening our sales cycles and increasing our revenues? Those things. Much better today in terms of figuring out your marketing spend, and is it effective than it was years ago?
Well, I think you're right, because there's so many different things when you're going through social media or anything that you can put through the internet. You could definitely pull all the analytics and really break it down and look at it. And I think what I found is important is you have to know how to read those analytics too, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can see the results at some point. I mean, in the old days, there was a famous Philadelphia retailer, John Wanamaker, who used to said, half of my money that I spend on marketing is wasted. I just don't know which half. And and then you have the modern story, which is I just read about Domino's and how they moved into their mobile app and how that's increased the average transaction value for their orders, right? Because they created this great user experience and drove people to use that app, which is absolutely fascinating to me, right? They didn't add new product, they didn't change prices, they didn't add coupons. No, they just made the customer experience different.
Yeah, they definitely, being a pizza guy, so I followed exactly what you're saying. They definitely spent their money on tech. There was no doubt about it. I was there up until 2005, and at that time, they were one of the first places to have a touchscreen POS, where it was actually you called up and ordered a pepperoni, and you could teach anybody in 30 seconds how to take an order. You just hit their name off the caller ID, their pepperoni pizza, and you just click, click, click all the way through. And I think even at that time, they were already focused on the tech, but then they came out with different things like the apps like what almost basically what Uber has, where you can see your driver pulling up to pick you up. Domino's has the same thing. It'll show you right where your driver is bringing the pizza to your door. So you're absolutely right. Rather than trying to figure out, a different way to market a pepperoni pizza, they were working on their tech. And I think that's what separates a lot of companies right now is finding where you can use different pieces of the tech puzzle, really.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of it drives back to the customer experience and the marketing around that customer experience, and going back to the original premise when we talked about entrepreneurship, which is what is that differentiated value proposition? There's only so many ways you can differentiate in your business or any business, that pizza, right? But you can differentiate the experience of how I order it, when I get it, how I know about when I'm going to receive it, all those other things. And it just amazes me that those are the things that are going to create differentiated value for existing or new businesses.
I would imagine that being at CMU and with your history with software, like you've seen a lot of great software programs come through, and different types of businesses come out of that. When you, like you were saying earlier, there's different ways to look at it. Like when someone asks you if they have a good idea, but can you still spot that good idea? Like, is there a time when you see it that you're like, okay, you're giving them the answer to make them think, but you kind of also say, boy, that's a good idea.
Well, you know what? I've learned not to try to judge too much because there are instances where I'll say to myself, I don't really get this. I don't think this is a great idea. And I'll tell you a quick story. About 10 years or so ago, I was doing consulting for a young organization that started up in Pittsburgh, and its name's called E-Billing Hub. And it was literally a husband and wife team. The wife was full-time working. She'd work at night. The husband was an unemployed computer scientist, and they had a small townhouse off of McKnight Road in Pittsburgh, right? And she actually worked in a law firm, and working for the guy who was the CFO of the law firm, who happened to be a lawyer too. They said, gee, this whole idea of going from paper billing, electronic billing is really getting big in law firms. And long story short, they came up with an idea of how to automate that billing problem, and I ended up joining them literally in that McKnight Road townhouse. But when I first was presented that idea, it was like, wait a minute, you're going to organize and triage and integrate with these other billing systems, and why does that really solve a problem? And so my initial thoughts was, this is a dog of an idea. This is a dumb idea. I don't really understand the problem or pain that you're solving, and I'm not sure if you're ever going to get cooperation between people that bill and people that have to respond to those bills through all these third-party systems. So quite frankly, I didn't get it. That wouldn't be the first time I didn't get it, right? But the more time I spent with the technology and the people and understood the problem set better, I was able to appreciate it. I think that happens a lot with people, no matter how veteran they are as an entrepreneur, how many, as I like to say, how many movies they've seen. You have your own personal biases, and you have your own kind of window of what worked or didn't work for you. And you also see this, by the way, where a young entrepreneur puts somebody on a board or has them as an advisor or a mentor, and maybe they had one success in their business or in their life, right, or their career. And they're the worst advisors, the one and dones. because they think they've seen all the movies through one good experience.
Mm.
And it's usually, they need some good failures and they need some ones that didn't quite reach all the way. And it's really through that aggregation of different experiences, almost like a great consultancies, that you really get appreciation of, hey, is this going to work in this situation? Is this really a problem in here? And, how can I really help and coach? So I think variety is actually really important to be a good judge of the opportunity.
Can you talk about, like, when you join a team like that and you come in to help, or you maybe you take some ownership on, how does the partnership work? Like, I think where a lot of people get hung up is, they're either going to try and do it all themselves, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And
Right.
and then I think, there's positives to both sides, but when you enter a partnership, like, what has to be set from the beginning as the ground rules for it to work? Or is that such a thing?
Yeah, I think you have to begin with the end in mind, which is may not work out, and what's going to happen if it doesn't. And
Mm.
so it's almost, I hate to say it's almost like a prenuptial. So many co-founders and partners in business walk into a business thinking that they're 100% aligned, and a year, 2 years, several years down the line, they're not aligned. Fred thinks Mary doesn't spend as much time in the business as they do. They're not as dedicated. They don't contribute as much. Somebody gets a little more distracted. The business didn't go in the direction that they thought it would. It's maybe not as interesting. Personal things happen in life too. They could have either a personal event or a tragedy, which means that they can't be as involved. Thousands of things happen, right?
Yep.
So first of all, setting up what local entrepreneurial expert Frank Demler says is the founder's pie, if you've heard of that. You can look that up. But first of all, figuring out the equity portion of the founder's pie and making sure people feel good about how you're splitting things. If there's 3 founders and you split the company ownership a third and a third, that's probably wrong. So start with that. The second thing, if someone doesn't fit or has to bail out, what are the rules of engagement? And make sure that everyone's agreed to those so that if that event happens, it's clear cut and it doesn't impact or affect the business. So those are 2 really important things that people don't think about because they're optimistic or they wouldn't be an entrepreneur. They come in and they think, hey, we're all in this together, and they don't realize that the journey's rough.
And then as far as having their own roles, like, should everybody know exactly what their role is in the company? Like, I think, what I've seen too is when somebody starts a business and everybody's trying to do everything, they may have titles, but they don't have roles. Can you see a big difference in that as well?
You said that exactly right. Really, in some ways, who cares about titles when you're early stage startup? It doesn't make any difference. You can call, okay, you're the chief executive officer, but you're making the coffee, sweeping the floors, go get the paper, whatever it is, right? It is those roles. And what I have seen in most great early stage businesses is people say, hey, you really are good at this, or we need you to do this because you're capable of doing it, right? One of the companies I worked with early on was a company here in Pittsburgh called Duquesne Systems, started by 3 software developers, 3 computer science guys. Now, so they were all technical guys, but what they did early on is they split up the responsibilities. One guy said, hey, look, you're the best technical guy. You ought to stay in that groove. You stay with the technology, the services, all that stuff. Another guy said, look, I like negotiations and contracts. I'm going to work the sales side primarily, right? And that's going to be my thing. I'll own that. Another guy said, hey, I'm going to handle the accounting, the finance, the governance, all those other things. So even though that they were all 3 computer science guys, they created those 3 different primary roles which the business needed, and that allowed the business to scale with that kind of focus, regardless of what titles they had.
And then when you're building out your team, how important is maybe the outside team? Like, sure, a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to bring in a certain team, and they hire the positions they need, but how important is it for like an insurance man or accountants or lawyers, like outside people to be part of your team? Like how important are those people to your team?
I think if you have somebody that shores up an area of weakness of yours, or has, more importantly, relationships that you can leverage because they
Mm.
understand or been in the same space, that is invaluable to you. So you can learn from one where you have weaknesses, and you can ask questions so you can learn and understand and not make fatal errors in your business. The other one is connections, and you can never, ever have enough relationships and connections in your business. And people that have been in your space, that can help connect your space, that are willing to give to the business and coach and help you, they're gold. They're absolute gold.
Yeah, I think connections is a good point that you bring up. You know, it's one thing when you're trying to get a hold of somebody that maybe you know who you need to talk to, and you try to reach out to them, but you know we're in a busy world, right? Like we get messages, emails, DMs all the time, but it makes a big difference when it says, "Hey, you know, this person said to reach out to you." Like doesn't like that leg of connection makes so much difference, right?
Look, I have students in my Masters of Product Management cohort. One of the things that we're always challenged with, as with any school, is what did they pay their money for? I look at them as our customer. They paid a
Mm.
lot of money because they want to get a job in a particular profession, at least when they graduate, right? And so, particularly for all my students to say, don't waste your time on these job boards throwing up your resume. This is not how you're going to get that interview with the line of business manager. I mean, you may get in through HR and they may turn you over, but it's going to take forever. Here's a better way: start networking. Go to my LinkedIn or somebody that's at the university's LinkedIn that has connections. See what business that you want to target or a company and say, hey, I know you know Joe so-and-so or Mary so-and-so. Can you connect me with him or her? And that will get that email open, that text message open, whatever it is. Shortens the whole time, collapses everything, and right away you're going to know whether you fit, you don't fit, or whether you have an opportunity or not. That's the
And
way you're going to find a job, right? And say that's how you're going to get a deal.
yeah, exactly. Took the words out of my mouth. Whether you're looking for a job or you're looking for the deal or you're looking for whatever it may be, maybe you just want that person's expertise. That's how you get it. Is you need that connection. I think a lot of people underestimate how important it is to have a connection like that.
It's all about relationships. And I don't care if it's B2C or B2B, it is all about relationships. And that's why those outside advisors are so important to you, if they can help you make those relationships. Not only that, when you think about your key vendors, that you're going to work with early on, an accountant, a lawyer, all those people that help your early stage infrastructure. Another business I did in cybersecurity, we picked an attorney that actually helped us do all the fundraising. We spent a week in his office. He got all of his high net worth clients who were interested in tech investing, and we did our pitch deck the whole week. We walked away with $1 million in investment because we leveraged his connections.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn there, because I think that's another part too, the fundraising part of it too, or just the funds in general. A lot of times entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they have no bank accounts. So
Right.
how important is it to be creative with the financing? And it's endless the ways you can be creative, correct?
It is, everyone, particularly in the businesses that I've been in, everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to raise money with an angel, I'm going to do venture capital and all that. And that may be good for some businesses, right? It may be just fine for some businesses, but it's not for every business. You can do a lot, and I've been in a couple businesses where it was just bootstrapped, and there's nothing wrong with just bootstrapping it, making sure that you've saved enough money before you start your business that you can live off of ramen noodles for 6 months and start driving those initial customer demands and fulfilling those customers. What a great way to control. There's nothing better than being able, that's the best money in the world, is the money from your customer to help you create your business, right? Now, the only risk you take is you don't want to, there's only one thing worse than no customers, and that's one customer. So you don't want to build one-offs. You want to make sure you're building something that's repeatable and scalable. And that's a little bit of the risk in the customer, totally customer-driven model. But if you can pay attention to those patterns and what you're building, sometimes you don't need to raise money at all, right? And those are great businesses to build.
Are there times too where you've looked at competitors and bought competitors?
Absolutely. One of the early businesses that I was in, going back to Duquesne Systems, there was actually only two competitors in the primary space that we were in, and we ended up buying out our largest competitor. And now it was interesting because their approach to the marketplace was very different than our approach, both in terms of technological and so we had two customer bases, and what we didn't want to do is invite in another competitor that would help erode those two while we were figuring out how to rationalize what we just bought. We were able to do that, but yeah, I mean, it can be extremely beneficial. Acquisitions are tough. I've been acquired, and I've acquired other companies. When I've been acquired, I always tell people that it's like going to work for a company that you didn't interview for the job. You kind of you ended up there and said, "Oh, look at this! Oh, that's my boss, and this is the systems we use, and here's the culture. Congratulations!" So it can be very disruptive, and I think that's why a lot of acquisitions don't work, because people aren't sensitive. At the end of the day, it's all about people again and relationships. And so if you pay attention to that part of it, they can be outrageously successful. If you don't pay attention to that and think you're just buying something that you can plug in and you're going to run successfully, chances are you're going to fail with it, right?
I really appreciate the few times you've already mentioned, or, the vast times you've already mentioned people. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. The way you treat people, the way that you build people up. Can you talk about really, like, at the end of the day, how important the people really are? Like, and I think even the connections and everything you're talking about, like, it doesn't matter if you're software business, pizza business, X business, people's where it starts, right?
It is. And and that's also the most challenging part about it is managing people and understanding people's motivations. And at the end of the day, all these businesses are made up of us. They're made up of people. And if those people don't feel comfortable about that culture, if they don't feel valued, if they don't feel rewarded, if they don't feel heard, if they don't feel like them when they get up in the morning that they can make a contribution, or that the job doesn't fit their lifestyle, whatever their roles are. And not everybody's type A, arm waver, competitive, wants to be, the next CEO. Some people just want to have a good job and make a difference in the world. But you've got to understand who that person is and what they value and where they fit. And can you create a culture that actually rewards and values those individuals? So when you get into these heavy bureaucratic processes are more important than people, this is how we do things. We can plug in part A, and if part A leaves to go to another company, don't worry, part B will come in. When you get to that sense, that's where you've lost it. You've lost it as a company. You've lost it as a business. The companies that are sustainable and great have invested in their culture because, as Peter Drucker used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's so true. And if you create that kind of culture, you'll have people that are there for forever because they know that they're valued. And that, at the end of the day, whether it's your customer or your internal person, is going to make a difference in your business.
If someone's out there listening and they hear the word culture and they're hearing you speak and they want to say, like, well, what is culture? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think it's, what is rewarded, what is acknowledged, what is valued, all the things, all the cues, as a manager, as a leader, as a boss, whatever you want to call yourself, people watch you and they take their cues about what you do, where you spend your time, how you say things, where you spend your time in the business. And they're going to say, hey, if the big guy or the big girl is that's what they want, do I fit into that system? Am I a part of that tribe, right? And so people want to know that, not only that can they be valued in terms of what they do for a living, right? And how, when they come to work. And so your culture expresses all of that. Whether in normal times your physical workspace, right, or the tools you're given, or how you're rewarded. Do you have meetings where you acknowledge people on the team and the success that they've done? And are you acknowledging that success because that's what the company values? I watched a really great show on Netflix last night called The Playbook, and it talked, and Doc Rivers, the former coach now, so even great people get fired.
Yeah.
The former coach of the Clippers now, I think at the 76ers, he talks about how you have to motivate people and make them all a part of a tribe, even when you have exceptionally gifted individual talent. And that's a big part of it. So whether it's pizza shops or the NBA, doesn't make any difference.
And is it all about money, or is it not really all about money when you're trying to bring your team together and motivate people?
No. Matter of fact, I think there's study after study after study that will tell you it's not about money. Many companies that I went to work with, certainly I and others have gone to work. It was not about the money at all. It was about being a part of something where you can make a dent in the universe, where you felt like you felt good about what you could do and what you could contribute. So it's not, I think, if it is about money, that wears out over time. The money is great, but the feeling of pride and the feeling of contribution and camaraderie and social acceptance and the recognition that you work for this company, and when you're out on a Saturday afternoon or a Friday night or whatever, and you say, I work for Joe Bag of Donuts, and they go, wow, I mean, it's funny, I've never worked for an organization that has the reputation, the prestige or brand that Carnegie Mellon University has. And so I see it myself, right?
Sure.
You work for Carnegie Mellon University, and right away there's this immediate association and halo of CMU, which is wonderful, right?
Right.
And I think it makes you feel good about where you're associated.
Yeah, I think when we first got introduced and I saw Carnegie Mellon, I think you're exactly right. And I know, I told you that I was a pizza delivery boy for many years, and there was definitely a spot that I went from manager, and then I was a pizza driver. And the whole time I was a pizza driver, I was focused on how am I going to end up owning my own pizza shop. Like, that was my whole goal. While I was delivering pizzas, I also was working 4 other jobs, saving as much money as I could. But where I delivered a lot of those pizzas was to the Tepper School of Business. Like I told you, I would go in there and you could see all the young kids focusing on their studies, and stock markets everywhere and all the TVs in there. And I would deliver to all the different rooms and the lectures. And, that's where I realized I was like, I think, I didn't go to college. And what I got by delivering to all the universities was a lot of it was the studies. And that's where I started to really just gravitate towards reading. And I never really read till I was delivering pizzas to all these universities, Pitt and CMU. And I just started reading nonstop. If I wanted to learn about negotiating, I read 6 months of every negotiating book I get my hands on. And that was, I said, okay, I took my class, and I'd move on to the next one, whether it was, finances or whatever it may be, scaling and I do this to this day. I still just read as much as I possibly can, but I always appreciated, when I would go to CMU, it just made me feel good, I guess, delivering pizzas. That's my CMU story. But yeah, it's very prestigious.
And it's a crown jewel of Pittsburgh for sure. And we're really lucky here in this community, because there's other communities I've worked in or been a part of where they haven't had that level of prestigious university, or many of the universities that we have here in Pittsburgh, or other assets that we have. And so, it is interesting. But I also, going back to building a brand and building culture
Yep.
and entrepreneurship, I mean, whether it's Carnegie Mellon University as a word or as a brand, or whatever your business is, I mean, that's really what you want to aspire to, that people want to come work for you because you've put out, or they want to go to school there or whatever it is, because you've built such prestige and reputation in your brand that they want to be associated with it.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's where, as a pizza company, winning world championships, we found that when we promote these things and build the brand around the championships, the level of employees that we're able to have come to us, they're like, hey, I've worked at this other pizza shop for so many years, and they kind of want to come in and see what are we doing, what's different. And I think you're right. When it gets into the culture, a lot of what I've tried to create is the appreciation culture, where people are actually appreciate it, whether it's a shirt that says how many years they've worked for us, or the old fashioned employee of the month, where people think that that's not a good program. If you do it right, it's a great program. People just like to be recognized. That's the whole thing.
I agree with you 1,000%. There's nothing wrong with employee of the month. Any type of recognition is more important than the money. It really is, that people are recognized for their years of service, for their whatever contribution, some event they did, called out in front of their peers and said, hey, you did a great job. Thank you. And that's another set of words that really help build the culture. Just saying, taking the time, even if it's their job, just say thank you. Please say thank you. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate you doing it. That means the world to somebody.
Yeah, I think you're right. Please and thank you go a long way. And I think, especially when you're working long hours and busy, fast paced, you'd be surprised at how far those words go, for sure. Yeah. Especially if you mean them. That's the other part, right? Like, don't just go through the motions of any of this stuff with culture. You have to, don't just appreciate people because we're telling you to appreciate people. Like, really genuinely appreciate them, right?
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you. You have to be sincere. People can smell. They have a BS detector on. They'll smell if you're just saying it just to say it, or But I'll tell you what. You write a handwritten note, particularly in electronic days, that says thank you to somebody. My goodness, and they'll show that to how many other people, and the impact of something like that is amazing.
What if you've gotten a situation where you've done everything, you feel like you've done everything you can, and you have that guy that comes to you and they're ready to leave for another position, another company? How do you approach it? Do you approach it person by person, difference, whether it's somebody you really want to save, or when do you know to let them go, and when do you just really try to realize, like, hey, maybe I did do something wrong with this guy's leaving, and can I save it?
I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to save an employee that you value. Right. But there are some natural things that happen as companies grow, as things change in any business, where somebody could be a valuable contributor at one portion of the business, and it just may not be a fit for them in the next step of the business, or for what you want to achieve. You always have to think of the company first. It's not you as the boss or the CEO, and it's not the employees and teams that make it work. Actually, there's a third person in all that relationship, and that's the company. Unfortunately, the company doesn't have a voice, so we have to be the voice for the company. And I think as long as you're doing what's right for the company, then the company will continue to succeed, and you'll attract good people, and people will stay. Sometimes people come and go. Now, there used to be a philosophy: if someone quit, they're banned, they can never come back. I don't buy that either. I think sometimes people have to go to experience something else and see where, another opportunity. Maybe they're leaving just for money, and they realize that money is not what it's all about. Maybe they think that there's a title that they love, or some opportunity they have to get out of their system. It's okay. But I like personally to part on if someone's got to go and you've reached that point, you've tried, and it's just, for whatever reason, it isn't going to work. It's a small world. We all run into each other a million times, right? Just be at peace with it. keep the door open. It's unfortunate it didn't work out. You don't know if that person's going to come back, or they can help you in other ways, or you can help them in other ways. So it happens, right? It can be disappointing. You work the best you can, but these things happen.
I think you're right, and that's what there's different lessons you learn. I think there's different times when somebody goes, and then you realize maybe you are upset, and it didn't go the right way. But you're right; it's a small world, and I think a lot of times what I try to do is always point back to myself and say, what did I do wrong in that situation? And I think when you really get honest with yourself, you can kind of pinpoint where you could have been better. And I think that's what happens sometimes when somebody leaves too, is you realize like, hey, we haven't recognized this guy. He's been busting his butt, and I should have told him earlier. And I think sometimes if you get to that situation and somebody's leaving, honesty is the best policy too, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with telling them like, hey, I should have came to you sooner and said thank you for this or whatever it was. Like, it's never too late.
It isn't. And Nick, what you just said there, a lot of people don't do. You just held the mirror up on yourself and said, I'm going to listen and reflect and see how I can improve, because I don't like this feeling. I didn't want this person to leave. So if they're going to go, maybe what can I salvage out of this? And one of the things I can do is I can learn and I can improve myself and I can be better, so that I don't have this feeling again with somebody else that's still on my team.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, what I figured out is sometimes that doesn't come to me as quick as I would like it. When I look at, okay, what did I do wrong? And sometimes I'll be like, I did nothing wrong. That's when I got to take a long walk. That's when I got to say, okay, I need a walk till I walk till I realize what I did wrong, because that's it. I mean, I think that's human side of us. Sometimes we want to say we didn't do something wrong, but the longer that I sit there and really think about it and put my ego aside, I get down to the root of, okay, this is where I went wrong. Because as a leader, as an entrepreneur, like it all falls on you. I think you have to be able to at the end of the day realize your faults, or where you could have been better is really what it comes down to. Right.
And you may come down and say, I understand that person's point of view. I understand why the situation is. I've learned from it. I can still disagree with it.
Yeah, right.
But at least I understand it better. And even that process of understanding makes you a better leader.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between empathy and sympathy. And I think when you realize what they are and you look at it different ways, it definitely can help you be a better leader for sure. And have you also seen with the students and with the different projects and different companies that you've been involved in, that the leader makes a huge difference too?
Absolutely. The fish stinks from the head down, right, is the old saying. So, the leader sets the tone and the pace. People look to the leader. I think that's just part of the human experience. And so you do have that responsibility and accountability to the organization and to the people in the organization. And so the leader does set the tone of what is rewarded, what is acceptable, everything above, right? So a lot of parts of what is the culture and how the culture is implemented or honored, as people would say today, is really based upon what that leader says and does. So it's very important that the leader does that. It's all the way down to who we're going to hire and what we're going to spend money on. It's not just people acknowledgement. This is also about resource allocation. Are we going to open up that new shop? Are we going to buy that new piece of equipment? Are we going to buy that additional delivery truck? Or are we going to hire somebody else because we're swamped at this store location? People look to the leader to say, do they have good judgment, and what are they saying by doing something or not doing something?
And how important is it to build leaders in the company? Not that you're just the only leader, but how important is actual building leaders, whether it's outside training programs or it's through different programs that you may offer, or different different systems that you put forth of your business, of like, hey, this is how we're going to build a leader, but like, how important is it to actually spend time on leadership development of your team?
I think it's very important, and I like to have people. I've always tried to hire people that are better, smarter than I am all around me, because they'll make me better.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And at my bar, it's not hard, you know. And the other thing is, you got to let people try things. You got to let them make mistakes and be willing to live with that. And you got to invest in them to get educated. You just mentioned how you self-motivated to get yourself educated and read things. And, you know, you think about the resources, Nick, that are out there today. You got online courses like Coursera and Udemy, and you've got Audible and all these, 12-minute read, 15-minute read apps on your phone. There are thousands of ways for people to improve themselves and make themselves better. So you've got to encourage them. You find an interesting article, you watch an interesting documentary, you have an example, an interaction with somebody, share it. Invest in those people. Let them also benefit from that, and vice versa. Encourage them as they have these interactions and learn things or see something that worked or didn't work, they had a learning. Have them come back and share it with the team. Again, that helps them buy into where they are, what they're doing, and it's going to make them better. Someday, all of us are not going to be able to do the jobs we're doing right now. Somebody's going to have to step into that, whether partially, halfway, all the way, whatever it is. And you don't want to come to that day and say, oh my God, I don't have anybody around me who's a leader who can help continue to run this business. Again, think of the company. The company's got to succeed. So it's not about you, me, whatever. It is about us.
No, I think that's beautiful the way you put it, that somebody at some point, you know, you're not going to be able to do your job forever. Somebody's going to be able to have to come in and take that position. And I think that's where you have to have people that are comfortable that hiring other A-level talent too. I think where you can get in trouble is if you have somebody on your team that's afraid, I don't want to hire somebody in and train them well because I don't want them to take my job. Like we do run into that, right? Like that's a real thing. Yeah. And I think that's important is you want to talk to your people and be like, look, your position's safe, but we need to bring in other great people because it's going to build the company faster. And that's where, you know, we've had that. I've seen that firsthand before where people, it feels like, you know, we're not bringing the right level of talent. And I think sometimes you got to switch up your interview process of who's doing the interviews and kind of talk through bringing in the great talent, correct?
I think there's an old saw that, and I'm probably going to screw this up, Nick, but that A players hire other A players, but B players or C players or something like that. And that's true.
Yes.
If you're very confident in yourself, you want to hire people that are better than you because you know that that's going to not only help you, your organization, make you look better. It's kind of a paradoxical thing, but people have to realize that don't have insecurity about that, because when you start hiring those people that aren't as good or can't push you or can't take your job, that's when the organization that you're in is going to suffer.
And I know another thing right on that same note is, you know, realizing, you know, like you're saying, to hire people that are smarter, it's also hiring people where you know your weakness. Like, hey, this is my absolute weakness. And that's where, you know, I always try to hire my weaknesses as well.
Yeah. You know, I'm like a lot of sales, marketing folks, even though I have an industrial engineering degree, which they tell me is about process and structure. I'm terrible at it. So it's not my strength. I work really hard to be good at it. And of course, some people that is their nature. They're very organized, very structured. They really have their disciplines down. And I always find if I can find somebody that can help me in that area, makes a world of difference, makes me better, and hopefully they're happy because I can't do it as well as they can.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on was, you know, for the young entrepreneur, how important are mentors?
I've had mentors all my life, whether they're formal or informal, right? People that you can reach out to, pick up the phone, whether it's you had a bad day, you just want to cry on somebody's shoulder and let them listen, or you're really stuck with a tough problem. people problem, business problem, the capital problem, whatever it is. And you say, you know what, have you been down this road, or have you experienced something different, or what would you do here? That is not only is it just baseline stress relief, but it is really important on your journey. Those people will be with you for hopefully a long time in terms of your career and guiding your career. I've mentored other people, and God bless, there's been people who invested in me. Part of the reasons I do what I do today is because I am, going back to your earlier comment, Nick, paying back others that along the journey were kind enough to give me a break. They gave me a chance. They helped me out through difficult situations, and whether it was business or personal or whatever. And I just think you need to build that group of people around you, of trusted advisors that are going to make a difference in your life and your business.
Very well said. Greg, if our listeners want to get more of you or reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you, and where can they find you at?
Well, I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can find me Greg Kotychia, Koticchia on LinkedIn. Connect with me there. I'm happy to do that. My direct email is gregcott, GREGCOTT @gmail.com. Feel free to shoot me an email, and we can connect and schedule a time and chat some more.
And Greg, now it's time to solve the equation to your success. This is where I get to ask you 7 rapid fire questions.
I'm ready.
Okay. Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
Predictive index.
Favorite item you've bought recently under $100?
Set of Jabra earbuds.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you've met in person.
Oh, that I met in person. That's a tough one. I'm just going to go with guy I mentioned before, Jack Roseman.
Favorite book you give as a gift?
Think and Grow Rich.
That's my favorite book. Something you do every morning before you brush your teeth?
Make myself a cup of tea.
Your personal mantra or favorite quote?
Just do it.
And place you go to decompress and reset?
I have a little place in Southwest Michigan, a town called South Haven, and it is the best place in the world. Just the stress melts away.
Greg, I really appreciated our conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate the time, and thank you for the opportunity to be on your show.